Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to give it a minute to let everyone in. And I have muted everyone upon entry. And we would like you to be muted throughout the presentation. We will also take questions at the end of the presentation, and we will take them through the chat box first, and then we will take any questions if you use the raise hand function that is in Zoom itself. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate Jerian.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kate Jerian. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and the General Counsel for the ARC New York, and it's honestly my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Johnson, who serves as the Deputy Commissioner of the Administration on Disabilities for ACL. And ACL is the Administration for Community Living, which is part of the Federal Health and Human Services Department. And its goal is to ensure that people with disabilities have full choice in services and full community participation. And this presentation today is really going to focus on what some federal initiatives are to recognize the critical role that DSPs play in supporting that choice and that community independence. And they're going to discuss what they're working on to try to assist the national crisis. It's obviously very prevalent in New York, but across the country, the shortage of DSPs. With that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, and thank you for that kind introduction. And we're delighted to join you today and share information about the work that we are doing to address the DSP crisis. As was mentioned, I am Jennifer Johnson, and just to give you a visual, in case you can't see me, I am a middle-aged white woman. I have salt and pepper hair, which is pulled back, and I'm wearing glasses, and I have on a dark blazer and a gray shirt, and I also have on turquoise earrings and a virtual background of the ACL logo. And I'm honored to be joined today by my colleague, Melvina Wright, who will introduce herself a little bit later in the session. And being here today is actually a bit of a virtual homecoming for me. I originally hail from New York, and I grew up in Rochester, New York, and still have family in that area. So if there's anybody on, I think I saw somebody maybe from Monroe County. So glad to see the local area being represented. So it's special to be speaking at this event today. Melvina can, or I'm sorry, whoever, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an overview of the Administration for Community Living. Some of you may be familiar with us, but in case you're not, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on ACL. We are part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and as was mentioned, we focus on maximizing the independence, well-being, and health of older adults, people with disabilities across the lifespan, and their families and caregivers. ACL is committed to ensuring that people with disabilities can fully participate in all aspects of community living, including learning, growing, playing, working, and being valued alongside people with and without disabilities. The Administration on Disabilities, or AOD, is a component of ACL, and we focus on creating change to improve the lives of individuals with disabilities by equipping them with the opportunities, tools, and supports to lead lives of their choice in the community. And we do this for people with disabilities across the age span. Our goals focus on moving from a society where people with disabilities experience institutionalization, isolation, discrimination, poverty, joblessness, and dependency to one where people with disabilities are living well in the community, they are included and fully participating, they experience financial well-being, and lead independent lives where they are self-determined. We accomplish most of this work through our various national grant programs. We fund independent living services in the states, including Centers for Independent Living that cover 352 service areas across the US. And within New York, you have 16 centers for independent living. and also a statewide independent living council. We also fund in every state and territory what we call the DD network, which is comprised of the state councils on developmental disabilities, the state protection and advocacy systems, and the University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And within New York, that is the New York State Developmental Disabilities Planning Council and Disability Rights New York. And you are one of the few states with 3 university centers, and they are the Rose F. Kennedy University Center, the Westchester Institute for Human Development, and the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities. We also fund projects of national significance that address issues of national need facing individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We also fund Traumatic Brain Injury State Partnership Program in 28 states and 2 national resource centers, the National Limb Loss Resource Center and the National Paralysis Resource Center. And finally, we provide support for the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities. And we have 4 priorities that we focus on within AOD to advance quality community living for people with disabilities. And they are achieving economic security and mobility, promoting health equity, preventing rights and protecting rights and preventing abuse, and empowering individuals, communities, and families. Next slide, please. So today, as was mentioned, we're here to talk about the direct support provider crisis, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. We know that the direct support providers are very instrumental to ensuring home and community-based services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And they are such a critical component to that HCBS infrastructure. But we know that we don't have the DSP workforce needed for home and community-based services when we have an average turnover rate of 45% and continued recruitment challenges, all of which have been exacerbated during this pandemic. Next slide, please. When we look at the reasons why we have this crisis, we know that there are multiple drivers to the crisis, but a lot of this is due to the fact that there's been a lot of changes over the years for people with IDDD, and many of these are good changes in terms of where people are living, and if we just look at how community living has changed for people with IDDD. We recently announced the publication of 30 years of community living for individuals with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. And this resource was written by 3 longitudinal studies that we fund. It's a free digital book that you can access on our website. But what it does is it explores the evolution of inclusion of people with IDDD in our society. And it highlights how opportunities for community living have significantly expanded during the last 30 years. And we see that the vast majority of people with IDDD now live in homes in the community and not in institutions. And we've seen a huge shift in Medicaid-funded supports. In 1987, 9 out of 10 people who received Medicaid-funded supports lived in an institution. So there wasn't a great need, obviously, for DSPs. But by 2017, 9 out of 10 people who received supports through Medicaid were receiving them in the community. But when we look at the availability of paid supports, that still trailed the need. And in 2017, fewer than 1 in 5 people with IDDD, or 17%, receive paid supports for community living. So again, we know that demand has really not kept pace with where people are living and the progress that we've made for people to be living in the community. And we also know that that demand is only going to grow in the coming years as more and more people live in the community. Next slide, please. So we know that there's a crisis, and at ACL, we knew that we needed to do something because we all are very much about innovation and solving problems to support community living. And we currently have 2 projects that we're funding to do just that, to solve the problem. We have what we call our Living Well grants, and we also recently concluded a DSP prize competition. I'm going to share a little about the Living Well grants and then turn it over to my colleague Melvina, who will share more about the DSP prize competition. Just to give you a little bit of background on our Living Well grants, what they basically are doing is developing and testing model approaches for enhancing the quality, effectiveness, and monitoring of home and community-based services for people with developmental disabilities. Next slide, please. Right now, we're funding 8 of these grants, and so they're in 8 different states. And why we wanted to highlight this work to you is because some of the projects, or all of the projects, are focusing some of their work on the DSP workforce for ensuring quality community living. Like I said earlier, we know that there's such an important part of the infrastructure that when we're looking at strengthening HCBS, we must be looking at what we're doing to strengthen the DSP workforce. And we left it kind of open to these grantees to decide how they would do that in their state and really respond to their state, and also to look at what are some different models out there for strengthening the DSP workforce. And so we're just going to highlight from 3 different states some of the work that's being done to strengthen the DSP workforce. So in Georgia, they're using an online training curriculum to develop sustainable career pathways and build capacity amongst DSPs and frontline supervisors. And what they've done is they've developed 3 tracks in their training curriculum for staff. There's a new hire track, an existing staff track, and then a frontline supervisor track. So they're using training as a way to strengthen the quality of the workforce and also work towards retention. And then in New Hampshire, what they're doing is piloting a program to basically get high school students interested in DSP work and give them that experience and exposure to DSP as a potential way to recruit people into the workforce. Next slide, please. And then in Idaho, they're focusing more on systemic changes that are needed by looking at recommendations that are needed to address the workforce crisis in Idaho. But also tying that to where there's evidence of work that, or evidence where it helps to strengthen the workforce and also retain the workforce. So just wanted to share a little bit with you about that, but wanted to focus a little bit more of our time today on the work that we did through our DSP prize competition. So I'm going to turn it over to Melvina now to talk more about that. Melvina.
Thank you, Jennifer. As mentioned earlier, my name is Melvina Wright, and I'm a program specialist within the Administration for Community Living. And I also served as the lead staff on the DSP Prize Challenge. I want to apologize in advance because my camera does not work on my computer, although I have my camera on. To give you a description of myself, I am an African-American woman with brown hair, wearing a black shirt and silver earrings. My virtual background today is the logo for the Administration on Disabilities. Next slide. All right, so today my role in this presentation is to walk you through the steps taken to execute the DSP Prize Challenge from beginning to end. We're going to start with what is a prize challenge. And I think this is a new concept for many, but just to explain very generally that a prize challenge is a tool that has been used to solve problems and drive innovation for a specific need. You'll also hear that a prize challenge can be referred to as a competition or an incentive prize. Those are some of the different terms that we have heard throughout the field regarding prize challenges. On the federal level, a prize challenge is an alternate way of fostering innovation. It allows the public to solve problems presented by federal agencies, and those that are involved in solving the problem will receive an award for the best solution. The most important thing we like to emphasize today regarding prize challenges is that it's not a grant. It is not a grant. There are 3 simple steps for a prize challenge. 1, the federal agency announces the problem to the public. 2, You get participants to create and submit solutions to the problem that is presented. And 3, the federal agency evaluates those solutions and awards prizes to the best solution based on the criteria that has been developed. Next slide, please. All right, so the next 3 slides will address the thought process in creating the DSP Prize Challenge and outline some of the goals that we created as a result of that. I would also like to mention that the goals were multifaceted. ACL wanted to take a look at ways to develop innovative business models that could potentially stabilize the DSP labor market. Next slide, please. Some of the other areas ACL wanted to identify with this particular prize challenge was look at the ways to create a better balance of the supply and demand of qualified DSPs, look at the potential of achieving better rates of retention through incentives, advancement, career paths, etc. Factor in and address any real and measurable barriers such as geographic, rural areas versus urban areas, transportation, and possibly even training. The other goal was to redefine career development requirements and pathways using non-traditional methods. Next slide, please. So some additional areas that we wanted to address with this particular prize challenge is to include individuals with ID and DD throughout the development of the testing models. So our focus area was to make sure that we included that particular community. We also wanted to make sure that there were commitments from business partners, and that will be implemented in round 2, where I will go into what the details of that is regarding small scale testing of the challenge. We also wanted to look at improving the stability of the home and community-based services system and outcomes for individuals with ID and DD, as well as provide a more innovative business model than what currently is the standard for DSPs. Next slide, please. All right, so let's take a look at how we developed the DSP Prize Challenge. One of the first things we did before getting started, we were given the task of coming up with the prize challenge, but we actually developed an advisory council. And the advisory council was comprised of experts in the field who worked on any area that had to deal with DSPs. The total amount of the award that we were dealing with at the time was, we had a pot of $310,000. So we had to structure the prize challenge to ensure that the $310,000 was the overall amount that we used. We comprised the challenge into 3 rounds, and I'll go through each round as we continue in the presentation. We also had to look at developing a pool of judges. And what we did is we had about 11 or 12 judges from the beginning. And in those judge pool, we had individuals who currently use or used a DSP. We also had experts in the field, and we had federal staff who currently use or used a DSP. So we had 3 different categories of judges, and we wanted to make sure that those judges had the expertise that were particular to this challenge. In round 1, what we wanted to happen was we wanted to receive proposals from innovators who would create models to improve the stability of the DSP workforce, supporting individuals with ID and DD that are living in the community. So we wanted to ensure that it was a community-based model. Round 1 was slated for the fall, and we actually started it November the 20th, 2020. There was approximately a 10-week time frame from the announcement to the due date of round 1 proposals. So we launched the actual prize challenge in November 2020, and proposals were due on Monday, February the 22nd, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of the details regarding the first round was outlined on challenge.gov. All of the details were very specific on what font to use, how many pages, what information we needed, all of that information. As a result of that information on challenge.gov, we received 29 proposals from innovators. And because we were looking for innovative ideas, we actually called our participants innovators. During round one, the written proposals that were submitted, they were reviewed by the judges based on the criteria that we selected. And the initial criteria, again, it was outlined on challenge.gov, and it was very specific as to what we wanted. There were questions that were asked, and the criteria was established. And with round one, we wanted to award out of that $310,000, $100,000. And we were planning to select up to 5 participants to move from round one to round two. And we actually awarded 5 awards during round one. Next slide, please. All right, this is a list of our round one winners. And they are in no specific order, not by ranking or anything like that. So our winners during round one were Able, South Carolina, the Collaborative for Citizen-Directed Supports of New Jersey, the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals Incorporated, SEEC, S-E-E-C, and RCM of Washington. I would like to take a moment to walk through each slide for round one, just so that you can have an idea of what the judges were looking at as it relates to the proposals that were submitted. Next slide, please. In looking at Able, South Carolina, again, this is in no particular order. Just wanted to share with you what we found out of the 29 proposals that were submitted during round one. Able, South Carolina proposed a 2-prong approach. They used an innovative marketing campaign for recruitment that looked at the perspective of DSP roles paired with disability rights training for new and current DSPs. By framing the role of the DSP as an advocate and ally, Able, South Carolina wanted to propose that there would be a new look of the field. And the proposal that they submitted was very well done, and it allowed them to meet the criteria and advance to round two. Next slide, please. The Collaborative for Citizen-Directed Supports of New Jersey. What happened during round one in that proposal, the collaborative, they actually introduced an interactive map. And it showed innovative ways where self-directed employees and direct support professionals are located so that the clients can contact them regarding their services. It also gave DSP agencies and lists that were available so that the map could be used each week. The collaborative had built in over 700 people who could share and promote the map and the DSP and the SDE support solutions. Next slide, please. The National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals Incorporated, they were able to provide they were guided by the belief that all DSPs benefit from access to well-constructed educational experiences. They created an eBadge Academy to provide the path to credentialing. So NADSP did the Credentialing Academy. And they included testimonies of individuals who would be participating as DSPs. Next slide, please. SEEC. SEEC is a Maryland organization that worked in partnership with the Maryland Direct Support Professionals Training Consortium, and they proposed the Building Tomorrow's DSP Workforce Initiative. So this was another proposal that brought in training as one of the components of how to actually combat the DSP crisis. They looked at the career path as well as socioeconomic advancement of that particular program. And they wanted to make sure that they were elevating training, formalizing credentialing, as well as providing a variety of on-the-job mentoring opportunities. So SEEK actually put in place a pilot project that identified core competencies that were necessary for DSP workers to have. Next slide, please. And the last winner of round one was RCM of Washington. And RCM of Washington submitted a proposal to expand the DSP Academy. And they provided a customized vocational training program format to certify people with ID and DD to work as DSPs using classroom and on-the-job training to complete state training requirements. Next slide, please. All right, so that was round one of the PROUDS Challenge. Looking at round two, we started the round two portion of the challenge in the spring of 2021. And the participants were actually asked to conduct a small-scale feasibility test on the proposed business model that they presented in round one. So of the 29 proposals that were submitted, the 5 individuals that were awarded in round one advanced to round two and was asked to do a small-scale feasibility test. And of those 5, we were going to award up to three awards with a total of $90,000 during round two. During round two, unlike round one, there were only proposals that were submitted. But during round two, we also did a presentation of the innovative idea. And we also set a criteria for the judges to review those particular winners from round one. And the criteria will be found on the next slide. Next slide, please. All right, so during round two, in the presentation, as well as the written information that was submitted, the innovators had to ensure that they were looking at implementation, which was 30% of what they were being evaluated on. 30% was also partnerships and collaborations. 20% was evidence-based, and 20% was impact. So we made sure that each participant going into round two had a criteria that they knew how much each particular area weighed so that they could submit all of the information that was requested, and also the opportunity to present that information during the live presentation, which was done virtually. Next slide, please. And from round two, we wanted to award up to. So we actually did 3 winners with that total of $90,000. Able South Carolina moved on from round two. The Collaborative for Citizen Directed Supports of New Jersey and RCM of Washington. Next slide, please. All right, so in round two, winners with their small scale testing for Able South Carolina, they demonstrated promising success of recruiting DSPs by reframing them as essential to equity and social justice, while supporting their role through training modules that reinforce better relationships with the individuals that they serve. The Collaborative for Citizens Directed Supports of New Jersey, with their small scale testing, they demonstrated through the proper formalized partnership, effective marketing, and professional training that it's possible to increase the size and improve stability of the DSP workforce while improving the capability of the DSP. In RCM of Washington, during their small scale testing, they indicated with a tailored cohort recruitment, strong collaboration with state partners, and a person-centered curriculum and training that the DSP workforce could improve and gain stability. Next slide, please. So round three, it actually began this summer of 2020, actually. And we were looking at the promise of model sustainability during round three. So we wanted to examine the long-term sustainability of these models from those 3 awardees from round two. We had the presentation to the judges, and it was followed up with the question and answer period. And from those 3 awardees, we were only going to award 1 prize. And the grand prize winner was actually announced on October the 13th, 2021. And that award was $120,000. And the award went to the Collaborative of Citizens Directed Supports of New Jersey. And we actually have the collaborative with us today that will go through their presentation and share with you what they presented regarding the DSP Prize Challenge. Next slide, please. We were looking at during round 3, we looked at sustainability. We also looked at partnerships and collaboration, scalability, and cost effectiveness. Again, because this was an innovative idea, we wanted to ensure that what was presented, we could look at the sustainability for long-term effects. Next slide, please. All right, again, the grand prize winner was the Collaborative of Citizen Directed Supports of New Jersey. And I am going to turn it over to the collaborative so that they can introduce themselves and share with you their presentation. Next slide. All right, Marion, are you on?
I am, Melvania, thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks to the ARC of New York for having us, and certainly for the Administration on Disabilities for organizing this, and certainly for inspiring and making the DSP Challenge a reality. So we're here. This is the list of presenters, and just a quick bit about the collaborative. Hopefully you've all checked out our website. Please excuse the appearance. We're constantly trying to evolve and enhance it. We are a group of volunteer stakeholders in the New Jersey IDDD system. We represent people who use the system, services, family members, support brokers, other stakeholders within the self-directed system, which is really where our emphasis is. So that includes support coordinators, it includes fiscal intermediaries, and general community members, because we've got that goods and services waiver service, and we make it a point always to include our neighbors and local, regional, and state business owners. So everybody here is going to have an opportunity to present. We want to use our time effectively to give you give you an overview. Our PowerPoint slide deck is really a compilation of what we presented to ACL during this challenge. So we're thrilled to be here. So everybody will introduce themselves. You can see, you can see here the names and how they are affiliated with the collaborative. So I am Erin Frederola-Salino. I'm honored to be the board chair of the collaborative. I'm also a co-founder and serve as the executive director of Values into Action New Jersey. I am a white woman. I'll say middle-aged. You can judge that. I have dark brown hair and I'm wearing a black shirt and silver hoops. And I'm standing in front of a picture from Billy Penn, the Philly Daily Newsletter. This is a picture of a skate park in the city of Philadelphia. So next slide, please. So the title of our presentation was, and really of our challenge response, was Mapping the Future, Sustaining a Vibrant DSP Workforce. Next slide, please. So we really, during this time, as all of you and really the rest of the world, we went into crisis mode back in March of 2020. And as the collaborative, we really sought to answer the question, what can we do for folks in this unprecedented time? And back then, nobody knew really what COVID was. All we knew was there was fear and anxiety. And then the reality that a lot of the services within the IDD system in New Jersey and elsewhere were closing very rapidly. What that meant was that DSPs were becoming underemployed and unemployed. Very concerning. And also as concerning is that people with disabilities were quickly losing services. So for those stakeholders who use congregate services in buildings and facilities, some of them immediately lost services, and of course their family members then were compelled to stay at home. Many of them perhaps were becoming underemployed or unemployed. So the collaborative really chose to look at what we could do in that moment and time. And the ACL challenge came upon us. And again, as a group of volunteers, we're like, well, what can we do? We wrote to the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities and said, you know, you've got some seed money here in terms of a community innovation grant. We're going to write for that. Are you even considering grants during this time period? The New Jersey Council said, absolutely, please write it and submit it. We'll consider it. And thanks to them, they believed in what was basically just an idea that we have continued to kind of evolve and move into concept, move into platform and a tool. And now, thanks to ACL, we can continue to evolve that into a brand and a product that can be used. Our aspiration is anywhere in the country and hopefully anywhere in the world that it's needed. Next slide, please. So again, round one of this challenge was really to present an idea that is considered innovative. So we turned to experts in our own field, namely two, the NADSP and AAIDD. And Anthony, if you're still able, you're still on. I know that you had a competing appointment at this time, and I can't see you right now. But Anthony Vasquez is our self-advocate advisor. And Anthony, do you want to say a bit about why we thought it was important to start the map during this time?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, so glad you're still here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this was a good idea to make this map because as somebody like myself that uses supports, I think it's very a simple way to find someone faster because in my experience, I've only it took a very long time to find somebody. So now with this map, it's a lot easier to find someone.
Thanks, Anthony. And we'll call on you later in this presentation, as you know, if you can stick around. So, but thank you. And thank you for all the work you've done as an advisor. We're going to turn to the next slide, please. And Jen Brown will take it from here.
Hi, my name is Jen Brown. I am a middle-aged white woman with white hair. I have a black and white and gray polka dot shirt on today. My background is a little bit muted, I guess. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the mother of a 24-year-old son who experiences disability. I'm also the founder of Eros Group in New Jersey, a person-centered support brokerage agency. We are MAP users. Research has shown that COVID-19 forced companies to take radical steps to adopt technological advancements and modernize culture, organizational structures, measurement systems, and operating architectures. All that says is that it became clear that we are interdependent. We are dependent on each other. And with the increase of the available technology, industries have changed, including ours. Our solution with the interactive map increases social capitalism, embraces the technology, and this new workforce model. The next slide. So now instead of a traditional in-office full-time job with a single company, so-called gig workers work for one or a variety of employers. Here's some examples of those models that you see, like for example, DoorDash, right? Somebody who does DoorDash very often will do Uber Eats or Uber or some of these other companies. We're seeing this in New Jersey where a support worker often works for multiple people. The map is this tool to enhance this network of sharing of available gigs. Marina, next slide.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marina Capote. I am actually the HR manager for Gold Medal Home Health, and I have been brought in to assist the collaborative with the construction of the map. I am a Caucasian female in my early 30s. I have brown hair that is currently pulled back into a bun. I'm wearing glasses and a gray button down, and my pronouns are she, her. So essentially what we've done with this map, a lot of you might be asking, what's the point? What's the usage? What does it do for us? What does it do for those in our community and in the populations? The map that we have created essentially brings immediate service to those that are experiencing of a loss of a DSP due to COVID or for any other reason. As we all heard earlier, the turnover for a DSP is about 45% annually. So the map is something that we've created to combat that staggering statistic. This is essentially a quick and easy alternative to what a normal recruitment method might be. Since we've created this map, we have had hundreds of DSPs and people looking for services come to us requesting to be represented on a map similar to this one or this map itself. This tool essentially provides efficient linking from either users or agencies or self-directed employees to the sources, the resources that they're looking to find. So what we currently have on our map, what's represented currently, we have self-directed employees, we have direct support professionals that are represented by the agencies that they work for, and then we have those people that are requesting services for either themselves or a loved one. And what our map does uniquely is that it puts them on a map. So part of what the goal was for this contest to win this prize was to consider geography was one of the options. So a big thing in this field, working in the direct support staffing industry, is not only finding the quality caregivers, but having them be, having the right schedule or being close enough to take on a case. We work in an industry where we provide one-on-one supports for those in the community that are looking for supports or people that are individually living in their home and that need one-on-one supports. So we had the idea to put them on a map so people could literally see where the cases were, where the DSPs were, and it was a very effective tool to linking the two. So what this map does is offer a one-click connectivity. Essentially, you will click an icon on the map and you will be displayed whatever information it is that you're looking for, either for that DSP or for that case. So one of the other things that it helps consider, which is another factor that you're considering with recruitment, is the availability of a DSP or the availability of the schedule that you're looking to find a DSP for. So these sort of marry the two. This map sort of marries the two and trying to have those conversations before you really have to have those conversations. So this provides a DSP a simple solution to submitting their name, raising their hand for a potential case. And it helps those looking for supports take a little bit of control and say, I don't have to necessarily go to a specific agency. I can find somebody myself, which gives them the control in these situations. Next slide, please. So this is up to you guys if you'd like to play. We've put together a 5-minute video on how essentially to get involved in this map. And this will show you a little bit more about what it looks like and how it works. If you'd like to play it, I'll leave that to you guys.
Marina, it might be good. Hopefully people will have this PowerPoint, only because I know the time we wanted to leave time for a question and answer, but thank you. It is on here for folks who are participating in this webinar. And there's also a YouTube channel as well. Thanks, Marina.
Yes, of course. So that video, if for those of you who are interested, I do recommend taking the time. That map, there's a lot going on that map. If you watch that video, it does break down what each icon represents, the different colors, the different symbols. It tells you a little bit about what the purpose is, what you can find out by clicking on these icons, and then also how to get yourself on that map, how to get your agency on that map. So I strongly encourage you guys to take a look at that if you're even at all curious. It's a pretty remarkable tool.
Thank you, Marina. Next slide, please. And Jen, you're going to highlight quickly some of these examples for us.
Sure. The interactive map works to increase the DSP workforce and improve stability and enhance the skills of not only direct support professionals, but also self-directed employees. We partnered with stakeholders across the service system and then used this partnership to improve the map based on the feedback. This allowed the users of the map to impact the map architecture. By doing so, we created something developed by the very people who would be using it. The impact was an increase in the usage of the map. Marion?
Okay, next slide, please. So part of round 3 was obviously demonstrating that this idea, which became a platform, became an actual tool, a solution, perhaps among many, hopefully, for this crisis. And also, in addition to using the Google Map, what we also built in to our process was this concept of a map support team. So Anthony serves as the self-advocate advisor. We have a map facilitator who does outreach and provides very individualized assistance to people who may have questions about the map, concerns about the map. And then, of course, Marina, who's the tech who's been sitting behind this and who continually updates that map and will be involved as we kind of take this from a very simplistic use of the Google Map into something that is more sustainable. Next slide, please. So again, not just the solution, which is a Google Map, right? Available to just about anybody who has access to technology, both the hardware as well as the Wi-Fi, the broadband. And our project also considered some specifics when there are challenges, particularly for people living in rural areas of our communities, as well as for people who are economically challenged in terms of affordability. So part of our implementation plan to ensure sustainability, as well as geographic expansion, which we don't have time to go into today, but we're happy to talk with you more about, our plan builds in strategies for that. So again, core interactive map team available for assistance. What we have also done is built in a continuous quality improvement component. We will be hiring an independent evaluator to continually look at both the quantitative and the qualitative data coming from the map usage, and we continue to make refinements. So in the short time we've been doing this, we can't tell you how many enhancements have been made based on real user, real feedback in real time. And so we want to keep that cycle very transparent and very efficient, because we know the times they are changing. So what we come up with today and even this week, we know that it's going to have to evolve over time. One of the other things that I wanted to point out quickly was this works, and it's worked really well for agencies that are really trying to transform their practices to become more person-centered. We had an agency approach us in the beginning and say, you know, we want to just post all our vacancies. And we said, not so fast. Part of the commitment to using this map and part of what we demonstrated in the small scale feasibility is that by creating memorandums of understanding, we can be very explicit with the expectations. And one of the core expectations here is that people and their families are in control. Second to that, DSPs also have a choice about where they work, with whom they work, and when they work. And part of our research showed that that's the reason for a lot of the turnover. Yes, it's wages, but it's also people feeling like they have little to no autonomy and control over their own work and their own career. So again, this interactive map, we act as a bridge. And I want to pass this along back to Jen so that we can get to some of the other slides, but we're happy to talk more in depth about this. Jen?
Sure, next slide. So Google, we've used Google for the infrastructure for the map. Next slide. And along with that came this a Google Ad Grant. So we were actually able to. This is like another example of how we utilize current technology to solve the sustainability issue. These Google Ad Grants are available to nonprofits, and using the challenge prize money, we were able to double our budget for advertising in a month. So these grants will have the potential to benefit any organization involved with the map that sign up for any agency that signs up to use the map. they have access to these grants. These are things that are available to everybody. If you go to the next slide, we have a sample ad. And as you can see, they're customizable, right? And they speak to what it is that we're trying to accomplish, which is that idea of the gig job, right? The idea that you have control over your life, which has really come to be apparent during this time. So those are some things that we utilize within Google to increase the sustainability. Marianne, back to you.
Yes, very quickly. Thanks, Jen. Again, next slide, please. Think about, this is a continual kind of evolvement of the map. Again, we just started this. We're volunteers, and we are totally excited to use our prize winnings to further develop this map from a Google map that's used to more of a brand and a product really that can be just used by people anywhere. An example of some of the evolving enhancements that we seek to make are, eventually that DSP or the self-directed support staff will be able to have their own profile page. There was a question already in the chat about how do DSPs, kind of connect with people and talk about what they need. This would be a way for the DSP to kind of show off their skill set, to show off any kind of certification. This can also be a place, and we've already have seen from the map, the small scale feasibility testing, is that the map can be used as a training and education platform. So some of the other ideas that were presented during the challenge in terms of certifications and credentialing, the map can eventually be broadened and to bring in those resources and those processes. Next slide, please. Okay, so part of this work too was to create an implementation plan. Next slide. And we are working, we submitted a 3-year plan to ACL. And again, what we have today, we don't think is going to stay stagnant. We're going to continue to evolve it. And with this slide, you can see that some of our planning now involves refining what we're doing, continuing to build an effective support team, adding in some paid support to this. Year 2, implementing, building proprietary content and expanding geographically into other states. That's actually already underway. And then year 3, expanding to other markets, other fields within the community-based service system. And I'm going to turn it over to Paul just to kind of give you a very quick, brief overview of the financial modeling that was also a requirement of this challenge. Paul?
Thank you, Marion. So briefly about me, I'm a CFO and co-founder of Values into Action New Jersey. We are a support coordination agency in New Jersey. We are also one of the founding members of the collaborative. So I put together the financial modeling piece of this. Ordinarily, this is the part of the show where people kind of tune out. So I'll just try to make it as brief as possible and give you some of the concept behind what was done and how we arrived at the figures. So the task at hand was to take the proof of concept and use the existing data to scale the project essentially over 3 years and to see what it could possibly do based on what we knew. So that forecasting, and I used a budget and forecast model to do that, took into consideration the current numbers of DSP agencies, factored in additional outreach and work that would be done by additional personnel. So what we learned in that year and a half, I guess, of this initial, launch was we had about 100 hours or so of outreach, which created almost 700 potential users. So the thought process was if we doubled those numbers, that would increase the number of web views, web hits, and potentially the number of users. So in conjunction with the website launch and some infrastructure that goes around that with web-based marketing, we projected a significant increase in the potential for revenue. So along that trajectory, next slide, please. So with the launch in the first year, we were expected to ramp up, which would include the hiring of personnel to do the outreach and to put this platform together beyond where it exists at the present time. So we're not projecting surpluses in the first year. In fact, we projected actually some losses through the first year. But what's interesting about it is by the fourth quarter, we start to see things turn around. Next slide. Year two, quarter one, we see based on the numbers of users turning around and the amount of revenue generated by the web activity, we start to turn a profit. And literally by quarter two, we've recovered the losses from year one. So next slide. Year three is where we start to see the real growth and the real potential for the MAP to pay dividends to itself. So that's it.
Thanks, Paul. So in terms of sustainability, obviously it's very important that this isn't just a good idea or something that can work in a very kind of small area or of the community. And so the financial modeling was also a very important piece of this. So I know we only have a few minutes left. Our apologies for kind of going over time. You can see there was a lot involved with this challenge, and we were happy to meet it. Can we go to the last slide, please, just so we can acknowledge, obviously, ACL, as well as the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, who again believed in us from the start. Hopefully you all will have the copies of this PowerPoint. We're happy to answer questions, to talk more in depth, but we also want to be respectful of time. So thank you all again for your time and attention, and ACL and NJCDD for your support.
Thank you, everybody. We do only have 1 minute left, and I know there have been some questions in the chat box that I think people have, there have been some answers to. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or questions?
I think, and just, this is Jennifer Brown, just in reading the chat really quick, all these people that are on the MAP as support people, either direct support professionals or self-directed employees, have to go through the Medicaid mandated fingerprinting, drug testing, background check. We do in New Jersey, we do a child abuse registry, and we also do a developmental disabilities offender. So this, please don't think that the MAP is hooking up random people without any of those checks and balances. They're very stringent, very measured checks and balances in there.
Can I ask a question about how this interacts with providers directly, recruiting for workforce, and how, this seems to me just at first blush that would be pretty competitive to providers trying to recruit the same people. Maybe not, but can you talk about that briefly before we close?
As
Sure.
a provider,
Go ahead.
I use it as a provider. And one of the things, I just got my bill for Indeed last month. It was almost $600. And that fluctuates every month. It's a fixed cost for me, and I get as many results, or as the same results that I would get from an Indeed or from it's just people that typically that we get from the MAP in New Jersey at least tend to be more person-centered and more willing to be flexible about where and when they work.
Thank you.
Did that answer the question?
It does. Yeah. Just trying to reflect on how this might work in New York. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time. I know this was a lot to pull all these folks together, and congratulations on your pilot. I guess it's more than that now. And I'm sure if folks have questions, they may reach out to you directly, but thanks again for everybody's time, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.